So, ladies and gentlemen, time for a little lesson on how to solve systems by elimination, specifically ones with a quadratic term. So, over here we got some steps on what we're going to do to solve this equation. Let's do step one, line up the variables. Lining up the variables means let's get the y's on one side and then the x's stuff on the right side. And so, this one's already ready to go. Sweet. To get this one to say y equals the other stuff, we can subtract off the x, and then we got negative y equals negative x minus 2. And then we got to get rid of this negative, so we're going to divide it by negative 1, or you can times by negative 1. Now we got y is x plus 2. Cool. So now we have these two equations, and we can line up the variables. We got y equals x squared minus 4, and then we got y equals x plus 2. You may notice I put a gap here, and that's because I want my x squares and then my x's and my constants lined up as well. It helps it make it so you don't like miss things or you subtract the wrong thing, whatever. So we did that. Hooray! First step done. Let's switch colors for our next step. Let's do red. Since the equations are quadratic, you need to eliminate y. So to eliminate y, I don't know if you remember back when we were solving systems of equations, last year, but you had to either add or subtract your equations, and that would eliminate one of the variables. Well, if we were to add down our column here, we would get 2y. That did not eliminate y, and so we're going to subtract. And since we're subtracting here, we have to subtract down all of our columns here. This is going to be minus nothing, and then there's nothing here, minus x, and then negative 4 minus 2. So I'm just subtracting down my columns here. Actually, let me put a little space here so it looks there. So now you can kind of see there's nothing there. So y minus y, we get 0. On the right side, we got x squared minus nothing, so we have x squared. And then we have nothing minus x, so that's going to be subtract x. And then we got negative 4 minus 2 is going to be negative 6. Hooray, we eliminated y. Next part. Put the resulting equation in standard polynomial form. It's in polynomial form. Cool. We got x squared, x, and then constant term. So that part's done. I'll just put a check there. Next part, solve using whichever method you choose. This is when you can use things like the factoring, completing square, or quadratic formula. I can see that this one is factorable, so I'm just going to factor it. I got 0 equals x minus 3. And then x plus 2. Hopefully all our practice with factoring for the whole year almost has gotten you used to this. Factors of negative 6 that add to be negative 1. That's negative 3 and positive 2. So I got this, and as a reminder, when you're finishing solving this, you set both of these equal to 0. And then to solve them, you do the opposite operation. So we'll add 3. Now we got x is 3. Or over here you subtract 2. And then we got so x can equal negative 2. So x equals 3 or negative 2. Cool. We have solved for x there. By the way, don't forget that when you go from this to your answer, you do get a sign change. That matters quite a bit. Next part. Substitute the x values back into one of the equations and solve for y. Yes, I realize there's a typo. So I'm going to switch my next color to purple. So I need to take both of these numbers and put them back into one of my equations. You can put them there or put them there. You should probably, strategically pick which one you're going to plug it into. See if you can do the one that's the easiest. Hopefully you recognize that this one's easier than this one. It's not that big of a difference. This one you have to square it and then subtract 4. This one you just add 2. So we're going to put it in this second one. So I'm going to plug 3 in. I got y equals 3 plus 2. Once again, summing that in, and then we got y equals negative 2 plus 2. And I'm putting those in parentheses just to remember that I'm substituting a number in. If this was like 3x or something, then it would be a 3 in front of these, and you have to remember to multiply. So, keep that in mind. But let's go ahead and simplify these. We got 3 plus 2, which is 5, and then we got y equals negative 2 plus 2, which is 0. So we got our two values. And apparently there's not the 6th step on this, but the 6th step is actually write your answer. Here, open that. Right answer. And your answer in this case is the point at which these two functions meet. Our first one over here takes the 3 and the 5, and that makes the point 3, 5. X goes first always. And then our second one here is the -2 and 0, so -2, 0. And we got our 2 points where these functions meet. Hooray! So it's awfully similar to the process when we're using substitution, except you eliminate at the beginning instead of substituting at the beginning. So we're going to go through a couple more examples here, just so you can see it again, but then your process will be these ones here, solving 1 through 8. It does round to the nearest 10th if needed, so if you get something that isn't factorable, you got to do quadratic formula, you're going to have to get the decimal approximations. So we got this. Luckily my y's are already lined up already, so I'm going to subtract, and I'm just going to subtract down my columns here. I get 0 equals, there's no x squared term, so I'm going to just get -x squared. There's no x term there, so I'm subtracting no x's, but I already have -x at the top. And then 3 minus 1 gives me 2. When I'm trying to solve this, I don't want a -x squared, I just want it to be positive x squared. So I'm going to divide everything by -1, that gives it a sign change. So I got x squared plus x minus 2. This one looks factorable. Factors of 2 that add, of -2 that add to be 1, you're looking at +2 and -1. And that means my x's are -2 or +1. So I got my 2 values there. Let's plug these into our first equation. It looks a little bit easier to deal with. So I think it's about the same on this one. I'll plug it in the top one just so you can see the sign thing. Don't forget there's a negative there. So we got negative, and we'll substitute in -2 and add 3. And then we'll also plug in 1 and add 3 to that. This first one's going to give me 2 plus 3, so that's 5. This one's going to give me -1 plus 3, which is 2. And now I can write out my 2 points. I got my 2 x values at -2, and the other one's at 1. And then we write the y values that go with it. Here I plugged in -2, got 5, so 5 goes with that one. Here I plugged in 1 and got 2, so 2 goes with that. And for some reason my parentheses are like really weirdly spaced. But there we go. Ta-da! We got the 2 points. Let's come over here to this next one. This one's not ready to be eliminated because this x is here, so I'm going to subtract that over. So I'm going to rewrite it down here. I got -x minus 7. So now that I have my y's lined up all by themselves, I can subtract. So I'm going to subtract, 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 subtract. A lot of subtracting going on here. Y minus y is 0. X squared minus nothing is x squared. And I got -4x minus -x is the same thing as -4x plus x. So that's -3x. And then here I got -5 minus -7, same thing as -5 plus 7. So that's plus 2. Or positive 2. And then looking at this, oh, looks like I do have a factorable problem here. Factors of 2 that add to be -3 are going to be -2 and -1. They multiply to be +2, add to be -3. Nice. And that means the x's are going to be at +2 or +1. And now that I have those, I can plug them into either of any of my equations up here, really any of the 3. But I like this one here. You just plug them in there. Y equals negative, and I'll plug in 2. And then -7 gives me one answer. And I got y equals -1 minus 7. And so my first one here, -2 minus 7 is going to be -9. And my other one, -1 minus 7 is -8. So I got my 2 y values that go with those. So it makes my points 2, -9. And my other one is at 1, -8. So I got my 2 answers. So that's what's going on in the assignment. If for some reason you get here and it's not factorable, you can use quadratic formula, get what the x is. You do have to approximate it. Use a calculator to get round to the nearest 10th. And then you can plug those into y. So let's say, for instance, this was like 2.78. I'd put -2.78 and use my calculator, calculate it, and you'll get some decimal thing. So just be aware that sometimes they're not factorable. So there you go. Go fight, win, get it done.